Okay, so imagine this. A single night where the skies over the entire Gulf region just light up. Not with fireworks, but with a massive, perfectly timed storm of missiles and drones. In this explainer, we're going to break down how 5 different nations dealt with that exact same assault, all at the same time.
And it's really hard to overstate the scale of what happened here. This wasn't some small skirmish or a minor border incident. We're talking about a simultaneous multi-front attack, and it was absolutely designed to overwhelm the air defenses of several countries at once. It was the ultimate test for the entire region's security. And that's the key thing to remember, the sheer scope of it all. The source material lays out a huge campaign of Iranian strikes hitting Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, the UAE, and Qatar, all in the same window of time. So let's start our tour of the region's response in Saudi Arabia. So our first stop is the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and they faced a really direct threat, one aimed right at their military infrastructure. The main target? A super important airbase, which put their defense systems on the highest alert. The Saudi Defense Ministry officially confirmed they intercepted 3 ballistic missiles. Taking down even one of these things is a huge technological challenge. So successfully knocking out all 3 incoming threats, that really tells you something about how ready they were. The target itself was Prince Sultan Air Base, which is a major strategic hub. The whole thing was basically a textbook interception. The missiles were spotted on their way in and destroyed before they could hit anything. But what's really crucial here is that this was the second attack like this in just a few days. So you can see the threat was persistent and, frankly, escalating. But the assault didn't stop there. It kept building across the Gulf. And as we move to Kuwait and Bahrain, you'll see the kinds of targets started to change a bit, which maybe reveals a bigger strategy behind all these attacks. So you can see 2 totally different playbooks here. On one hand, you have Kuwait, where the focus was a high-volume attack near Ali al-Salam Air Base, a place with a pretty big U.S. presence. But then you look at Bahrain, and the targets were completely different, civilian and economic. We're talking hotels, a residential building, and an oil refinery. This hints at a kind of dual strategy: hit the military hard, but also try to cause economic pain and scare the public. All right, let's shift over to the UAE and Qatar, because this is where the scale of the assault just went to another level. These 2 nations had to deal with what's basically a saturation attack, a strategy designed to overwhelm defenses by just throwing everything at them at once. 131. Just let that number sink in for a second. That's how many drones were fired at the UAE. The kind of coordination you need for a launch like that is just immense, and it presented a pretty staggering challenge to their air defense network. And then there is Qatar. Their missile defense was, wow, incredibly effective. They had 14 ballistic missiles coming at them, and they successfully intercepted 13 of them. Only 1 managed to get through, and it just fell harmlessly into the water. We're talking about a 93% success rate against one of the toughest threats out there. That's pretty amazing. But just because you shoot something down doesn't mean the story ends there. Successful interceptions don't mean there are 0 consequences. Every action causes a reaction, and these attacks had some very real human and diplomatic fallout that spread way beyond the battlefield in the sky. And this is a really crucial point to remember. The UAE did successfully intercept all 131 of those drones, which is a fantastic achievement. But what goes up must come down. The falling debris from all those interceptions rained down on a residential area for foreign workers, and officials reported that Nepali and Pakistani nationals were injured. So even though it was a total success from a military standpoint, there were still real people on the ground who got hurt. And of course, that human cost immediately got the diplomats involved. This statement from the U.S. State Department really shows you how quickly these regional attacks became a big international concern, especially since some of the targets were near areas with a major American presence. And this led to probably the most direct diplomatic consequence of all. The attacks in Kuwait were seen as such a big threat that the U.S. took the pretty major step of completely shutting down operations at its embassy there. That's a huge deal, and it's a clear signal of just how seriously Washington was taking the situation. So when you step back and look at the big picture, what we saw was this really complex, multi-pronged attack that stretched across 5 different countries. And it was met by a sophisticated and, for the most part, successful regional defense. It was a massive test of military hardware, for sure, but also of human resolve. And all of this leaves us with a huge question, right? The defenses held up this time, but the sheer scale of this attack has set a totally new precedent. It proves the capability is there, and so is the willingness to launch such a massive strike. So what does this mean for the future? Was this a one-off event, or is this the beginning of a new, way more dangerous chapter for security in the Gulf?